Hey friends, welcome to This Ohio Farmhouse. Every single week I tell myself I'm gonna make this video where I explain to you how I scored all of these wood chips that are behind me. Every single week I have a guy who's delivering an entire load to our property. So I wanna walk you through how I found him, what that looked like, because a lot of us try to rely on ChipDrop. I think that we have been on the list for ChipDrop for many years at this point, and never once have we actually gotten something from them. So I needed another solution because buying the amount of wood chips that we need for our property is really not economical. It's a very expensive thing to go about doing. So I needed to find an outlet. And so I have figured this out. But before I share all of that information with you, I want to take a walk around the property and show you how wood chips are having a huge impact on our homestead. The amount of things that we're able to grow because we're building up our soil health, the time management aspect of it because it's saving me tons and tons of time weeding, but then also how we're utilizing this for our animals and also for walkways and things through the garden. So let's take a quick look around the property.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
I think one of my favorite things about wood chips is its ability to block out weeds. So I was spending an incredible amount of time just in my potager garden, and I am trying still to get this under control. This was something that was on our property before we came, and I had to just figure out how to maintain it. So I have part of this that's been weeded and a whole lot of it that hasn't been. But where I have weeded it and gotten it under control, I've actually put down my wood chips in this area, and it has majorly suppressed the weeds in comparison to the rest. While this is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, I have not been out here to weed this area in probably a month because we've been so busy in our other gardens getting food planted. But this is the area where the wood chips have been laid down. But I'm gonna take you over to an area of my garden that I haven't touched yet. This is a little bit embarrassing because I have been so busy working at planting our food and our stuff in our actual edible gardens that I have let this kind of just go to the wayside. So in the areas here where I have not laid down any mulch, it is completely ridden with weeds and super overwhelming. If you look down right in this area, that's complete mass of weeds. There are a few plants that are growing within that area, but overall, the wood chips are having a huge impact on the amount of weeding I'm having to do. So I feel much better about the space where I have laid down the wood chips than I do in the places where I have bare ground. So I'm walking with you right now through our orchard. And we have, 15 or 20 fruit trees out here. Some of them are newer and some are more developed, but our plan for out here is to take these wood chips, and this is a lot to mow. And so we're going under all of these trees and around them, and then we're having to trim. And so we want to take out here, and actually they're kind of planted in a row. And so we're going to just make a complete row of wood chips, take out the sod and the grass here so that we can have just a nice straight continual line. Those wood chips are going to break down over time and kind of become compost for our trees, and so they're going to put nutrients back into the soil and really allow those to take off. So multi-purpose in what we're going for here. Over here in the potato garden, it was really obvious to me in the very beginning of the season when things were starting to grow, the difference in my soil health. We had about 2/3 of this area already established, and so it had had several years of being built up with the wood chips and all of that breaking down and putting nutrients back into the soil. And there was a vast difference in the first part of the potato garden that had been put in already and that we added this year. The plant growth was very slow and almost stunted in that part that we added, and it was very noticeable to me. Now things are starting to kind of level out, but I feel like most of my plants in the newer area are much smaller in comparison. And so I'll be curious when we actually go to pull out the potatoes, what the actual harvest is going to look like, if there's going to be a big difference in our old garden versus the new. The other impact that it has had over here was weeds, because this part has been completely overridden with thistles, and I mean like by the thousands of thistles that we've been pulling out of here. So we layered these wood chips nice and deep in here, many inches thick, and tried to just smother out all of the weed seeds from that. It's doing a fairly decent job. We're still getting some thistles that are poking through, and it's absolutely incredible the strength behind those little boogers, but overall, I think I have spent like half a day out here weeding this in comparison to multiple days in past years. So those wood chips layered up are really just building up soil health and compressing and suffocating out the rest of the weeds, which is an incredible time saver for me. I don't want to be outside weeding for my entire life. So anything that I can do to suppress the weeds and make my life a little bit simpler, I am all for. All right, I'm out here in our bed of garlic because I want to show you what the soil health really looks like. This is an area that we used our compost that was created just by letting the wood chips break down over the course of a year. So we had a pile that was delivered and it just continually decomposed and broke down. And so those wood chips turned into this black soil that's been incredible. And so my entire raised bed on this side is filled only with compost, because at the time I didn't even have topsoil available. So we had just the soil that was in here prior to building this up a little bit, and then all on top of here we put compost and more wood chips. Okay, so I just want to show you, we have some wood chips that we added in here this year, but it's mixed in with this really fine black soil, and this stuff has been amazing to grow in. We've grown garlic this year for the very first time, and it just exploded and really took off, so we're super excited. But this is what the wood chips can create for you. One of the best perks to wood chips for me is the water retention. It does a really great job of holding moisture in. We live in Northwest Ohio, which is as flat can be. You can see for miles and miles with no obstruction or elevation change, and so it is very windy here at times, which means that the surface of your soil is drying out very quickly. So this is one of the ways that we combat the soil drying out quickly, is by putting that really thick layer of mulch down, or the wood chips, and that actually holds the moisture down inside. And so if you were to dig away from the surface, it's still nice and wet underneath of there, and keeping your root structures nice and moist so that they can continue to grow. So I'm out in, this is what I would consider like our original garden. This is where we started everything. We put down some commercial landscape fabric, and holy cow, I feel like it's a game changer just from the aspect that my children know where to walk now and they're not walking and trampling on the plants. I can pretty much tell them, stay on the mats and you're not going to destroy any of my plants. But in between all of those rows is where we're growing. And so I have about 12 inches of growing space at least for my rows where I'm growing the plants up out of there. And that is where I have mounded up the wood chips. We also use a lot of the wood chips to layer in with the pigs. We do like a deep mulch method with the pigs, and so they are in there, and we just kind of like layer and layer and layer, and that keeps the smell down so that we aren't having to deal with that aspect of owning pigs. So we're gonna run in real quick into the house. I'm gonna pull up my computer and I'm going to show you exactly how I went about finding these wood chips and how you can do the same thing at your homestead. So real quickly, to find loads and loads of mulch delivered right to your house for free. These are some simple steps that I took and found somebody who lived right down the road from me who was ecstatic to be able to have a place to unload all of his tree trimmings from his business. So very first, you're gonna start out by going onto Facebook. Up there in that search bar, you're gonna type in tree removal. Well, and then you're gonna go ahead and click on posts. Right here, you're going to get all kinds of things. Some of them are gonna be posts that have been made by people that you know live in your area, and others are gonna be from outside of your area. So you kind of need to weed through this list a little bit. But what you need to do is find somebody who lives nearby you that has asked for this recommendation. You're gonna start clicking on all of their comments that have been made on that post and jotting down any of the cell phone numbers or company numbers that they have shared with you. It's very simple. Oftentimes they're actually posting the direct number to the owner of the company. And so I was able to go through there, and in about, I don't know, maybe an hour's time, I had about 15 contacts for tree trimmers that are just the small guys that do it on the side. Now in the past, we had contacted the bigger guys, the ones that we knew did a large amount of tree removal service around us. But what we kept finding is that they already had outlets and places that they used their wood chips. So they either sold mulch themselves or they sold to landscapers. They had an outlet and they weren't looking for help. But when we started reaching out to these smaller guys that do it on the weekend as just like a side gig, they were the ones who don't want to store all of that stuff on their property and don't really have a place to put it. So I started contacting them, and within the day, I had multiple text messages back from these guys saying, yes, I'm gonna keep your information. If I ever am in your area and I need to dump something, I'll call you first. They're happy to have a place to get rid of it. So we actually, one of the guys that we contacted, he lives within 5 minutes of us, and so he was excited because not only was it a place for him to get rid of stuff, but he didn't have to drive very far out of his way to unload, so he was happy to do it. So every single weekend he goes out and he does his tree removal service, and then he brings everything to our property. He brings an entire load of wood chips to our house, and he also brings us all of the logs, which has been an amazing benefit also because we heat our entire home and all of our water with just wood. So he brings that, he loads it into a big pile, and then Ben works at just cutting that up and stacking it. So it is saving us an enormous amount of time and money because Ben now no longer is going out chasing wood and cutting it down himself and bringing it back to the property. That takes a lot of time to get that accomplished, and so it's just being dumped on our property. Ben gets to cut it up, stack it, and we're finally getting ahead of that game a little bit. Then after he dumps that, he goes and he gets his wood chips. He's got them all ground up already, and he brings them out to us. And so every single weekend we get another load of both the logs and the wood chips. So it took me probably almost a full day of looking for numbers, contacting them, dealing with conversations back and forth, dealing with, giving them our address and information, showing them how to get here. But it more than paid off because we have more wood chips than we even necessarily need, and we're able to share them with our sister and brother-in-law as well. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on This Ohio Farmhouse.